Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thank you for your diligent practice. Yeah, it's amazing. I just finished a short video on Emil sent me a message asking about these large beads, and I understand the beads that are available commonly just they feel small in the hand. They're restrictive for my hands anyway, my arms, whatever. And I, after having gone through a lot of karma busting, building many butsudans, I decided to take on the beads, and I have a ceremonial set of beads and these everyday set of beads. And yeah, it's not an endeavor you want to take lightly to build for yourself. I consider these things part of my practice. They're not endeavors to support the channel, make money, or any of that, or aggrandize myself. There's a lot of karma that you will confront in endeavors such as beads, juzu, and butsudans, because I don't know. For me, it was pretty straightforward because I wanted the purity of dealing with something that was of me, in me, that I was clarifying something of my own construct, because that's what this life is. We construct this self, and then we enlighten this self. But to take on a butsudan from a manufacturer or somebody else's hands, I would always feel like I was in someone else's house. Do you see what I'm saying? So for me, it became important to do it for myself, but I was cautioned many times by senior practitioners. And now I understand it differently because I've gone through the karma busting, staying with the program, staying with Nichiren, staying with Shakyamuni's expression of the Lotus Sutra and self-practice. For me, staying with the program was difficult enough. In that I wanted to pay the maximal respect and homage to the concepts laid out by Nichiren and Shakyamuni. I didn't want to cloud it with any egoistic things. But I came to understand that one of the reasons the older members would caution against it is because there's this human tendency. It didn't happen to me, but I had a lot of members that I used to work with who instantly would have tried to infuse the beads or the butsudan with something of their earthly passions. From anime to wizardry to whatever they were preoccupied with in their life, they would try to force it into the butsudan or the beads, right? Little vials of blood. I mean, you name it. Kooky, crazy crap. The 3 C's. And that is an extremely bad cause, right? You're just crapping all over it. You're wanting to clear your karma. You're wanting clear, unobstructed, unattached experience of life. And here you go throwing in this, magical... Yeah, so that's a big no-no. But, human beings, we like our stuff, yeah? So look, I wouldn't recommend for all of you to race out and go to a jewelry store and buy all sorts of cool looking beads so you can make your juzu, right? Your prayer or meditation beads, right? For me, it was a step in my practice like learning Gongyo. You wouldn't go into Gongyo and say, well, I'm going to put a paragraph in here about Spider-Man. Just thinking that should make you shake your head, right? Well, the same thing is true with a butsudan or beads. These are part of your practice. And you don't want to sully that. You don't want to mess that up. You don't want to be misguided. You want enlightenment. You want Buddha-ness. So follow the program, right? I have PDFs on threefoldlotus.com about the beads with all the constructs and the pictures. I have a video about it, and I just finished a video talking about this whole process. So I'm repeating myself, but if you're interested in that, I'll make the title of that video obvious, so it's easy to search on this channel and come up with it. In the meantime, let's get back to Vimalakirti. What are we going to discover today? Shakyamuni's been moving through different personality types, really, as constructed in the mind, right? And so now he's Vimalakirti, an invention of Shakyamuni's. He's gone ahead and accepted all these whores from this pimp, although he's not using those words, that's what they are. And he's given them back to him with the proviso of his being a bodhisattva and leading these women to liberation. Kind of cleverly trapped this guy into taking that responsibility. But that was interesting. And so now we're in the midst of that, and we continue with Vimalakirti, or not, who's talking about Vimalakirti? This one, Papias. Blah, blah, blah. Karmic delight, to delight in a constant. Who's he responding to? Buddha is an upholder of the age. I'm not worthy. Blah blah blah. I guess that's the one we're talking to now. So he's quoted as saying about Vimalakirti, at that time the heavenly maidens bowed their heads at Vimalakirti's feet, and then accompanied the devil back to his palace, suddenly disappearing from sight. So this whole mental apparition that was congestion in this person's mind, who is claiming to the Buddha, I'm not worthy. Poof! With Vimalakirti's insights, that whole drama disappeared. World-honored one, such are the freely commanded supernatural powers, wisdom, and eloquence that Vimalakirti possesses. Therefore, I say I'm not competent to visit him. Okay, so Vimalakirti showed up and showed you how to sever yourself from your earthly attachments, even when they're offered to you blatantly. You don't have to accept things as they are with your human mind. You can see them with your perceptive shift of Buddha. You can see them clearly for what they are and send them on their way with compassion. You don't have to take offense. You don't have to accept your delusions. All of this is about making up your mind. Yeah, it's very, very clear. The Buddha then said to good virtue, we're going to go down the line, right? 500 of them, he asked. One of the wealthy men's son, you must go visit Vimalakirti and ask about his illness. But good virtue said to Buddha, world-honored one, I'm not competent. to go and visit him and inquire about his illness. Okay, what's your story? Why? Because I recall once when a great bestowal gathering was held at my father's house, where for a period of 7 days alms were given out to all the monks, Brahmins, and non-Buddhist believers, and to poor and humble folk, orphans, friendless persons, and beggars. So this is a ceremony that the wealthy engage in to make themselves feel better, right? And they offer alms and support to all of these various, whether they're Buddhist, non-Buddhist, beggars, all elements of society. At that time, Vimalakirti, who had joined the gathering, said to me, "You are a wealthy man's son. You should not be holding a great bestowal gathering such as this. You should hold a gathering for Dharma bestowal. Why hold a gathering for the bestowal of mere material goods? You're just contributing to the problem," is what Vimalakirti is saying. You think you're doing this great benevolent thing, but on one hand, it's just serving your ego or your sense of guilt, same thing. And your solution to your guilt and your ego is to give baubles to you, to hand out money to what? Buy off your guilt? There's really no benefit here. If you see benefit, you're completely deluded. You're not helping anyone. Remember, we have I don't know where this saying came from, but, hand a man a fish and feed him for the day, or show the man how to fish for himself and feed him for a lifetime. Yeah? Giving things is almost meaningless. Giving support, love, actions, teaching, that's important. That has value. So this is what Vimalakirti is pointing out. "Layman," I said, "what do you mean by gathering for Dharma bestowal?" Right? We get together, we all gather around a Butsudan and chant to a mandala to awaken Gohonzon, to awaken our Buddha-ness. That's a gathering for Dharma bestowal, yeah? He replied, Vimalakirti, "A gathering for Dharma bestowal is one which has no beginning and no end, in which alms are given out simultaneously to all living beings." So he's talking about the Bodhisattva way. He's not just talking about getting together in front of a Butsudan. He's saying how to behave each and every moment of your life. That's the Dharma bestowal gathering that Vimalakirti is pointing to. He always goes to that ultimate point, doesn't he? What does this mean? It means that through Bodhi, one cultivates a loving mind. Through saving living beings, one cultivates a mind of great compassion. Through adherence to the correct law, one cultivates a joyful mind. And through one's grasp of wisdom, one exercises an indifferent mind. Unattached is what. Indifferent has a connotation of being kind of haughty or looking down your nose. That's not what this. We should change that word, actually, to being a compassionate and unattached mind. By controlling stinginess and greed, one carries out the paramita of dana, or almsgiving. By converting those who violate the precepts, one carries out the paramita of shila, or keeping of the precepts. Through the doctrine of no ego, one carries out the paramita of kshanti, or forbearance. By dispelling attachment to the characteristics of the body and mind, one carries out the paramita of virya, or assiduousness. Through an understanding of the nature of Bodhi, one carries out the paramita of dhyana, or meditation. And through comprehensive wisdom, one carries out the paramita of prajna, or wisdom. By teaching and converting living beings, one comes to understand emptiness. By not casting aside conditioned phenomena, one comes to understand formlessness. By recognizing that living beings take on visible form, one comes to understand non-action. By guarding and upholding the correct law, one acquires the power of expedient means. By rescuing living beings, one acquires the 4 methods of winning people. By respecting and serving others, one learns how to banish pride. With regard to body, life, and wealth, one follows the doctrine that these 3 are indestructible. With regard to the 6 objects of reverence, one follows the method of thoughtful meditation. With regard to the 6 types of harmonious respect, one cultivates a straightforward mind. By correctly practicing the good law, one achieves a pure way of life. Through purity of mind, joy, and delight, one draws near to the worthy ones and sages. By not hating evil persons, one learns to temper and discipline one's mind. Whew, that's a biggie. I know I struggle with that last one. And I've talked about this, the state of the world, this age of degeneration. It overwhelms me at times at how much negativity, evil, the energies that are spent blocking people from their potential Buddha-ness. It's just so everywhere, yeah? So I need to temper and discipline my mind to do this, to continuously in my entire day be bodhisattva, be following the Buddha way, seeking Buddha-ness, clearness, compassion, yeah? By following the rules for those who have left the household life, one cultivates a deeply searching mind. By carrying out practices in the prescribed way, one acquires much learning. By observing ways that are free from the contention, one creates peaceful and uncrowded surroundings. By directing one's efforts toward Buddha wisdom, one learns quiet meditation. By freeing living beings from their bonds, one creates a setting for correct practice. Acquiring auspicious marks and purifying the Buddha lands, one pursues actions that bring rewards and good fortune. Understanding the minds and thoughts of all living beings and preaching the law to them in an appropriate manner, one pursues actions that bring wisdom, understanding that all phenomena are neither to be seized or rejected. One enters the doctrinal gate of the single nature of all phenomena and pursues wise actions, cutting off all earthly desires, all blocks and hindrances, all doctrines that are not good. One pursues all manner of good works, acquiring all types of wisdom, all good doctrines. One cultivates all the methods that aid one to the Buddha way. There's a footnote here. There are places in this troublesome passage where cause and effect seem to be in the reverse of their logical order. For example, one would expect the text to say that because one possesses a mind of great compassion, one seeks to save all living beings, not that through saving all living beings, one acquires a mind of great compassion. Well, this is obviously the troubles of the author to understand what's being taught here. I mean, just in that one sentence, I can easily correct that. Because it is our bodhisattva act in this human body that enlivens our understanding of compassion. I mean, this is throughout Buddhism. You don't take compassion off the shelf and then suddenly become a bodhisattva. That's backwards, Mr. Author. It is the act that enlivens the compassion. Otherwise, why practice? Why not just sit and contemplate your navel? This is the total point. This is why we chant. It's an active meditation. We actively invoke our Buddha-ness. We don't wait for it to filter in through the air so that then we can act like an enlightened being. No, we actively pursue our enlightenment. This is why the Bodhisattva way is so critical to our complete and perfect enlightenment. Because in defeating our ego, actively pursuing Buddha-ness, and sharing that with others, another great step outside of self, the realizations of our Buddha-ness has an act to direct the energy of enlightenment. It's such a simple formula. How could one miss it? Again, it upsets me when people seem to actively contradict what the Shakyamuni spoke of for 50 years and the scholarship of 3,000 years has been constantly hammering on, and yet we get statements like this. And now he's going to talk about the Tibetan version. Well, they're a bunch of magical fools, so. Okay, let's continue. I don't want to get hung up on that. Just did. World-honored one, when Vimalakirti expounded the law in this fashion, 200 of the Brahmins gathered there all set their minds on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhaya, right? At that time, my mind gained a purity I'd never known before, and I sighed with delight. Vimalakirti, a great bodhisattva, yeah? Bowing my head in obeisance at the feet of Vimalakirti, I took off my jeweled necklace worth hundreds and thousands in gold and presented it to him, but he was unwilling to accept it. The offer. Why is he wearing a necklace worth so much money? Oh, that's right. He's a wealthy man's son. Possession is so important to him, yes? So as a gesture of releasing some of his ego, he offers this to Vimalakirti, but he's completely missed. He says he was enlightened by Vimalakirti's words, and then he does this completely stupid thing. This contradictory thing. Poor little rich boy, yeah? Still doesn't get it. Layman, I said, I beg you by all means to accept this and to dispose of it as you wish. There it is, that same ceremony. Let me give you some wealth to appease my guilt for being such a dickhead. Vimalakirti, change your perspective. Take that necklace off and pound it in the ground, melt it down and use it to warm the next meal. Show your disconnection from its value. At least that would be more to the point. No, offer it to me as this great gift. You arrogant. What an insult. But look what Vimalakirti does. He then accepts the necklace and divided it into two parts. One part he gave to the lowliest beggars in the assembly, and one part he presented to the thus come one rarely surpassed. At that time, all the members of the gathering were able to see the thus come one rarely surpassed in his land called Light Bright, and they could also see the necklace placed on his person. So Vimalakirti immediately stripped this offering of its earthly value of gold and gave it the value of supporting other humans, other minds. It's not the greatest example, but Vimalakirti certainly doesn't need the wealth, which this young rich boy traffics in. I think the act of doing that wasn't so much for Vimalakirti or the wealth. It was to rub the young rich kid's nose in it. Here's what your necklace is worth. Right? Then the necklace changed into a jeweled dais fitted with 4 pillars, richly adorned on 4 sides, but without screens or obstructions enclosing it. Vimalakirti, having worked these supernatural wonders, then spoke these words. If a donor of alms bestows gifts on the lowliest beggars with equality of mind, dispensing them with impartiality, as the thus come one does in his field of rewards, if one exercises great compassion in equal measure without seeking reward or recompense, this may be called a perfectly performed dharma bestowal. Then the lowliest beggars in the city, seeing this display of supernatural power and hearing the words of doctrine that Vimalakirti had spoken, all set their minds on attainment of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhai. Therefore I say I am not competent to visit him and ask about his illness. In this manner the various bodhisattvas, one by one, described to the Buddha some past encounter with Vimalakirti and praised the words he had spoken on that occasion, and all declared that they were not competent to visit him and ask about his illness. What a bunch of selfish asses. So, I think we're all pretty clear on the situation, right? Embarrassment and weakness abounds. And these are bodhisattvas. They're not just, So now chapter 5 is inquiring about the illness. So I'm curious to see how this chapter goes. Really? Let's go ahead and begin, since this is so short. At that time, the Buddha said to Manjushri, you must go visit Vimalakirti and inquire about his illness. Manjushri replied to the Buddha, oh, please don't say the same thing, Manjushri. World-honored one, that eminent man is very difficult to confront. Oh, might be a different clarity here. He is profoundly enlightened in the true nature of reality and skilled at preaching the essentials of the law. His eloquence never falters. His wisdom is free of impediments. He understands all the rules of bodhisattva conduct, and nothing in the secret storehouse of the Buddhas is beyond his grasp. He has overcome the host of devils and disports himself with transcendental powers. Meaning he's able to pierce through his earthly environment of desires and use his Buddha wisdom clearly to communicate. In wisdom and expedient means, he has mastered all there is to know. Nevertheless, in obedience to the Buddha's august command, I will go visit him and inquire about his illness. Yay! Not without qualifying it, though. Manjushri acknowledges what these other 500 said. Vimalakirti is a formidable man. And whatever Manjushri's misgivings or consternation is about offering his compassion and sympathies for this man, I don't understand that, but evidently that's what's going on. Manjushri is going to default to being a good disciple of Shakyamuni. Since you ask, how can I refuse? Well, at least that. What was wrong with all these other bodhisattvas? At least see that your responsibility to Buddha-ness trumps all else. Yay, finally. Then the bodhisattvas and major disciples in the assembly, the Brahmas, Indras, and 4 heavenly kings, all thought to themselves, now these 2 great men, Manjushri and Vimalakirti, will be talking together, and they will surely expound the wonderful law. At that time, 8,000 bodhisattvas, 500 voice hearers, hundreds and thousands of heavenly beings, all decided at once that they would like to accompany Manjushri on his visit. Okay, I guess that's a good thing. I wish they'd learn from their own sloth, but Manjushri, see, all of these people are waiting to be given something that they simply refuse to realize they already have. And boy, did Shakyamuni illustrate that here. Manjushri, with his throng of bodhisattvas, major disciples, and heavenly beings reverently surrounding and accompanying him, proceeded to enter the city of Vaishali. Manjushri is going to do what he said he was going to do. And now he's got this major crowd following him. At that time, the rich man, Vimalakirti, thought to himself, now Manjushri is coming with that great assembly. At once he employed his supernatural powers, his insight. That's the transcendental power. To empty the room, clearing it all of its contents and its attendants, leaving only a single bed on which he lay in sickness. When Manjushri entered the house, he saw that the room was bare of its content with just one bed, Vimalakirti lying alone on it. Vimalakirti said, welcome, Manjushri. You come without the marks of coming. You see me without the marks of seeing me. In other words, attitude and intent, right? You didn't come here to see an old man in his sickness and his bed. You came here out of, first of all, a command from your Buddha-ness, from enlightenment, with compassion to offer me support. Not me, Vimalakirti, old man sick in a bed. Me, Vimalakirti, an auspicious man who traffics in bodhisattva. Traffics, courses, yeah? Manjushri said, just so, layman. What has already come can hardly be coming, and what has already departed can hardly be departing. What do you mean? What do I mean? What comes has nowhere it comes from, and departs has nowhere it goes. And what is seen cannot be further seen. But let us put that aside for the moment. So Vimalakirti and Manjushri do a brief pas de deux on the theme of non-dualism before entering on their main dialogue. This is internal dialogue, yeah? Layman, this illness of yours, can you endure it? Is the treatment perhaps not making it worse rather than better? The world-honored one countless times has made solicitous inquiries concerning you. Layman, what is the cause of this illness? Has it been with you long, and how can it be cured? It's interesting. He inquires to the letter of Buddha's request. He inquires about the illness. It's not what I expected. I expected a different kind of a supporting language. But this language is more, again, a student asking of a teacher how to act, what to do. It's somewhere in between, isn't it? But let's continue. Vimalakirti replied, this illness of mine is born of ignorance and feelings of attachment. I knew it. Because all living beings are sick, therefore I am sick. If all living beings are relieved of sickness, then my sickness will be mended. Why? Because the bodhisattva, for the sake of living beings, enters the realm of birth and death, and because he is in the realm of birth and death, he suffers illness. If living beings can gain release from illness, then the bodhisattva will no longer be ill. It is like the case of a rich man who has only one child. If the child falls ill, then the father and mother too will be ill. But if the child's illness is cured, the father and mother too will be cured. The bodhisattva is like this, for he loves living beings as though they were his children. If living beings are sick, the bodhisattva will be sick. But if living beings are cured, the bodhisattva too will be cured. You ask what cause this illness arises from? The illness of the bodhisattva arises from his great compassion. Manjushri said, Layman, why is this room empty and without attendants? Vimalakirti replied, the lands of the Buddhas too are all empty. Why are they empty? They are empty because of emptiness. Vimalakirti replied, and why is emptiness empty? Asked Manjushri. It is empty of distractions, therefore it is empty, was the reply. You hear me all the time talking about this is the age of intense distraction, constant, ever-present distractions. Buddha-ness requires a distinct release, liberation, detachment, distance, shutting up of all those distractions. Our tool for doing that is our active invocation of our Buddha mind to redirect all of our other senses on Buddha-ness. We do that with this mandala and chanting. We invoke it with every instance of Daimoku. He's talking about this without talking about it, but he's talking the same process is throughout all of Buddhism. It's this ulterior, refined reorganization of perception to experience something that's essential, pervasive, but being clouded by this other imposing attachment mechanism, right? The desire engine. Can emptiness itself be the subject of distinctions? Asked Manjushri. Can you just be preoccupied by distinctions and avarice and greed and desire for Buddha-ness? Isn't that just another... What a strange question to come from Manjushri, yeah? Distinctions are empty, he replied. How then is emptiness to be sought? Asked Manjushri. It may be sought in the 62 erroneous views of the non-Buddhists. How are the 62 views to be sought? Asked Manjushri. They may be sought in the emancipation of the Buddhas. And how is the emancipation of the Buddhas to be sought? Asked Manjushri. It may be sought in the minds and actions of all living beings, replied Vimalakirti. And you asked why I am without attendants, but in fact the whole host of devils and non-Buddhist believers are all my attendants. Why? Because the host of devils delight in the realm of birth and death, and while the Bodhisattva is in the realm of birth and death, he does not scorn their company. The non-Buddhist believers delight in various views of reality, and the Bodhisattva knows how to remain unmoved by such views. Manjushri said, this illness of yours, layman, what form does it take? You're starting to get a clue. This has all been a ruse to teach. This is Shakyamuni's expedient means. My illness has no form, replied Vimalakirti. It cannot be seen. Manjushri said, is this illness seated in the body or in the mind? Best question yet. It is not seated in the body, for it is apart from the bodily form, replied Vimalakirti, and it is not seated in the mind, for the mind is a phantom-like thing. Of the four major elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, to which of these elements does this illness pertain? Manjushri wants to nail this illness thing down. He's not quite getting it yet. Vimalakirti replied, this illness does not pertain to the elements earth, but neither is it separated from the element earth. And the same may be said of the elements water, fire, and wind. Yet the illness of living beings arises from the four elements. And because living beings have these illnesses, therefore I too am ill. All of this is an acknowledgement that Buddha-ness is a condition we can arrive at, awaken, while at the same time occupying this apparatus, this incredibly complex apparatus that is not just this body, but this body universe, as I've talked about before, all the same thing, that emerges this mind, the potential to observe this process. But this process, the sickness, the illness, it's not something you go take a pill for. It's the realization that this process is built on desire and therefore deluded by it. And that the mind that emerges can liberate one from this desperation of possession, holding on to, feeling gain or loss, as a misunderstanding of the whole process to begin with. Just like a child. No. That was just a dream-like reality. It's not real. What is real is that everything is a moment-to-moment instantiation of potential. All of it. Every bit, every single nanosecond of it. And to witness that, to be in that, is an amazing perspective, an amazing understanding, an amazing liberated being. Saw that flash of light again. I'm missing it. I don't know what it is. To continue. Then Manjushri asked Vimalakirti, how should a bodhisattva go about comforting and instructing another bodhisattva who is ill? Well, Vimalakirti told you, the very nature of being a bodhisattva means that you are a construction of this whole apparatus. The apparatus that manifests this condition, these tendencies and conditions of possession. That is illness in Buddhism, because it prohibits us from joy, happiness, compassion, realization of the true nature and amazement of life. That's why it is called an illness, a sickness. Make sense? Vimalakirti replied, tell him about the impermanence of the body, but do not tell him to despise or turn away from the body. Just explain to him how the body is constructed, from whence it is constructed, how it's constantly constructed, without the illusion of time, because it's moment to moment. It is outside of time, while being within time. Tell him about the sufferings of the body, but do not tell him to strive for nirvana. The body's going to do what the body's going to body in modern terms here, right? Tell him that the body is without ego, but urge him to teach and guide living beings. Tell him of the emptiness of the body, but do not tell him of its final extinction. This scare most people, yeah? Tell him to repent of former offenses, but do not tell him to consign them to the past. Because tendencies and conditions, remember the karmic freight train, they're always there to instantiate. What's required is a letting go of the desires that form those negative energies. Oh, it is the light in the Butsudan that's going out on me. I'll have to repair that. Finally, I noticed it. I know you did. Tell him to use his own illness as a means of sympathizing with the illness of others, for he should understand their sufferings throughout the countless kalpas of their past existences and should think about how he can bring benefit to all living beings. Well, there it is, expedient means. Our experience of our humanity and all of the foibles that we constantly experience are opportunities to learn how every other human being or living thing also experiences these things and how they glue our attention to us, how they become this need, these possessions, these losses, these emotions, these anxieties. We want to liberate ourselves from that engine of desire while remaining within the amazing experience of all of this stuff. Right? There's no annihilation in Buddhism. There's just a shift, a paradigm shift of perception, of understanding. Tell him to recall the good fortune he has won through his practice, to concentrate on the life of purity, and not to give way to gloom or worry, because those are just more attachments, aren't they? He should cultivate constant diligence, striving to become a king of physicians who can heal the ailments of the assembly. This is how a bodhisattva should comfort and instruct a bodhisattva who is ill, so as to make him feel happy. So this is how you and I encourage one another. We all go through ups and downs. We're all bodhisattvas of the earth, but sometimes we have doubts. Sometimes we suffer. Sometimes it's hard to chant. So how do we encourage one another? How many of you have been told by your Buddhist friends, you need to chant, go chant? Well, that's not helpful. How about, hey, relax, take a breath. Let's get together later today at my place. And then when the person comes over, you say, hey, would you mind coming over here, just chant with me for a few minutes? Yeah, okay. I guarantee you, after 15, 20, 30 minutes of chanting, hey, you hungry? You want a sandwich? Yeah, I feel better. I think I get it. Yeah. All you had to do was get back to Buddha. When you feel doubts, when you feel the sickness, you know what it is. What great advice. Manjushri said, layman, how should a bodhisattva who is ill go about tempering and controlling his mind? So how do I do that to myself? Vimalakirti replied, a bodhisattva who is ill should think to himself, now these illnesses of mine all spring from the deluded thoughts, right? The upside-down thinking and various earthly desires of my past. They have no real existence. So who is the one who suffers illness? Interesting. Why? The four major elements come together, and therefore we apply a makeshift name, calling the thing a body. But the four major elements have no master, and the body has no I or ego. And these illnesses, too, all arise from attachment to the ego. The sense of self, yes? Therefore, I should harbor no such attachments to the ego. A bodhisattva realizes this, right? But sometimes that's not even enough. Once one has understood the origin of illness, one may do away with the thought of an I or ego and the thought of other living beings as well. To do so, one should call up the thought of phenomena, thinking to oneself, quote, it is simply that various phenomena have come together to form this body. Something I've talked about often. The instantiations of potentials, energies, amassing to then create another mass and to eventually construct something we call a body. It has appeared simply because phenomena appeared, and it will vanish simply because phenomena vanish. And these phenomena are none of them known to one another. When they appear, they do not say, I have appeared. And when they vanish, they do not say, I have vanished, right? I'd be like a liver cell going, hey, I'm over here, stomach. Where you been? It's ridiculous, isn't it? But that's the magic we impose on. Identifying identity. Then in order to wipe out the thought of phenomena, the ailing bodhisattva should think to himself, this thought or concept of phenomena is a form of upside-down thinking, and upside-down thinking can lead to great misfortune. I must rid myself of it, but how to rid myself of it? By ridding myself of thoughts of I and mine, which means ridding myself of dualism, me and other. What is meant by ridding oneself of dualism? It means not thinking of phenomena as internal or external, but treating all as equal. All life in the universe, all phenomena in the universe are equally constructed, born, and evaporate. Death. Arise, right? Instantiate, some duration, and dissolution. Everything is this way. What is meant by equal? It means that I and nirvana are treated as equal. Why? Because I and nirvana are both empty. Those are both concepts relative to being. Why are they empty? Because they are mere names, hence empty. It's just a naming convention. We give them legitimacy by identifying them. How do we identify them? We label them. That's our effort of permanence. Oh, that's a this, and it'll always be this, and it'll always be my this, and I don't want to lose this. If it's not a this, then it's just happening. You don't own it, you don't lose it. Neither of these two phenomena has any fixed nature or characteristics. Once one has acquired this kind of equal outlook, one will be freed from all other illnesses, illness, and will have only the illness of emptiness. And the illness of emptiness, too, is empty. Well, I think that's a good stopping point. Yeah. We'll continue with this. Boy, we're finally getting to the meat of this sutra, right? How to be a bodhisattva. What a great sutra this is. It's kicked my butt several times. So I hope that you're getting tremendous insights from it. I hope you're enjoying this. Think about it. Re-listen, download the podcast. Don't forget, please, to like and subscribe. They're a reflection of the presence of these videos, this Sangha, in the vast universe of YouTube. And so the YouTube algorithms will say, well, people are looking at this. Maybe I should suggest it more often in people's searches about Nichiren or Buddhism or what have you. In that way, we do our little part to spread the teachings, yes? Thank you so much for your practice. Number one, be kind to yourself. Ask questions, comments, emails, and I'll see you in the next one. All right? Bye for now.